Hello, everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens and welcome back to our Election 2020 series. We are honored to have with us today Mr. Don Blankenship, the presidential candidate for the 2020 election representing the Constitution Party. Mr. Blankenship, you ran for the United States Senate in West Virginia in 2018, and you were also the chairman and CEO of the Massey Energy Company, one of the largest coal companies in the United States. Thank you so much for your service to our country, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Blankenship, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to go into politics and public service, and how has your journey been like so far?
Well, the first thing I guess I would say about getting into politics, I came to believe it was a necessity rather than being inspired. I felt like I had to. So, and I can explain that further as we go along. But I was brought up in southern West Virginia for the most part, born in East Kentucky, back in the days when we had a two-room schoolhouse with a potbelly stove and a pump outside and outdoor outhouses. We didn't have any indoor plumbing. So I know what those early days were like. And from there, I've managed to work in a coal mine and, become a CPA, a certified public accountant, and then become, if you will, an accountant at a big coal company, and eventually the president and chairman of that coal company, as well as sit on the board of the largest construction company in the world, Fluor Corporation, and on the board of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So it's been quite a journey. I've seen what it is not to be able to buy the things you'd like to have, and I've also seen the inside of the White House and had dinner at the private dining room table. So I've had a lot of experiences.
And from your experiences in the political landscape and your experience in the public service field, what is your favorite part about our political landscape?
I don't know that I have a favorite part. I probably have least bad parts, but the problem with the political landscape is that it's very much controlled by the national media. What people see and believe is pretty much what they see on television. Social media has helped some. And the fact that we have two parties that only give us two choices. And as a result of only having two choices, we don't really have the quality of people that we need to have running for office.
And as someone who is now running as a third party, in what ways do you believe not being a part of the traditional two-party system can provide a better solution to our current problems?
Well, I think if it provides any solution, it will be a better solution than the two parties are providing. The two parties, I compare them to professional wrestling. They act like they hate each other and they fight, but all they're doing is entertaining us and taking our money. They never solve anything, and it's all fake. And so at some point, we have to deal with the immigration issue. We have to deal with the budget. We have to deal with, the problems that we have overseas and illegal immigration. And we got to quit just using it for a political football and begin to answer and solve the problems.
And you talked about some of the issues that we need to start facing. What would you say is your overall vision for our country?
The biggest dream I would have for the country is to have an honest government and an honest media. I think that many times we are working on the symptoms of the problem. The problem is corruption, untruth, disinformation, misinformation, and greed. It's just a situation where we're not driven by a desire to make America great or to make it the envy of the world again. And we've lost track of that. We all benefit if we do the right things, but only a select few benefit when there's so much cheating and lying going on.
And Mr. Blankenship, a large issue that you talk about is what kind of legislation is being passed, and really making sure before each piece of legislation is passed that three things are considered. Can you tell us about these three principles or items and elaborate on their importance?
One of them I was talking about just now is ethics and lack of corruption. There's a lot of what I call legalized corruption in Washington, D.C. Among the worst is this thing where they have their own political action committee that's controlled by the U.S. senators. And of course, that is a horrible situation because they can trade legislation for money and then use that money to get themselves elected. Plus, it vests far too much power in the leadership of the Senate and the House, where the other members of the Senate and House have to cower to the desires of the leadership, else they won't fund their elections. So it's a really, really bad situation. Another one of those things, of course, that we talk about is what I touched on, the media. Most people don't realize that the media in this country is controlled predominantly by four major corporations, Disney, AT&T, Fox, and Comcast, and these companies are worth about $600 billion. And so they can withstand defamation lawsuits and so forth or whatever because of the great benefit they get from in a subtle way, advocating their products, advocating their policy positions, and taking care of their corporation rather than looking after America, which has been one of the biggest problems. So much of the corporation influence has gone to transfer an American way of life and American wealth to China, and so that needs to stop.
And Mr. Blankenship, if you are elected, what are the three biggest issues that you want to bring change to?
Again, I'd like to hold the government accountable, and that would require that we have, whether it be the general accounting officer or whatever, that we have ways to hold congressional members and Senate members and so forth to the same standards and the same laws that the rest of the country is held to. We also need transparency, and we need to do away with the trickery, like talking about unemployment being 3.5% when millions and millions of people are on welfare and they're simply not looking for a job, so they're not counted as unemployed. The unemployment number needs to be how many people who are working age and physically fit to work are working and not working, not how many have been looking for a job the last 6 months. But that's just one example of hundreds of ways that the government deceives the American public, and therefore in a democracy, the people make bad choices. That's probably the priority. This Hill Committee thing I mentioned should be illegal, and we should, of course, have far better elections. This election is going to be an example of a problem that exists in a big way. People are misinformed, as well as the fact that nobody really knows whether the count of the votes is going to be accurate or not.
And in our current situation in our nation, in the middle of a pandemic and now going into an election, there are often so many things that are going around that it's often important to sort of look back at some of the strengths that we do hold. And what are some of the current strengths of our country that you would like to be able to grow?
Well, I think if you look back to the Constitution, it's what allowed the country to be great in comparison to other countries. And what it did was unleash individual freedoms and allow people to be themselves and to pursue their own happiness. Human beings, good, bad, or indifferent, pursue what's good for them and good for their families. They don't pursue what's good for somebody down the road or somebody in another state. And the founders recognized that. And that is what has set America aside, as well as the fact that, you have term limits in the presidential position at least, and you have other things that they put in place, which basically is to mitigate human behavior. The entire Constitution is designed to prevent what happens in other countries, which is to prevent power from not only corrupting the country, but being able to continually corrupt the country forever.
And finally, Mr. Blankenship, how do you think that teens and youth can be more involved and be instrumental in bringing change to their future?
Well, they need to understand the history of the country as opposed to what many teens have been taught. We've got to understand that this country was unique. It was the most powerful country in the world. It was the wealthiest country in the world. And so they need to understand how it got to be that way. Because what's going on right now is a tremendous fight between going further to the left or going back to the right. And the world has proven for us, we don't need to prove it again, that leftist ideals will stymie production, will stymie people's desire, and will destroy wealth. And so students need to understand that, whether they're being taught that or not. There's plenty of information out there. They need to know the Constitution extremely well, and they need to understand the value of being honorable and truthful.
Mr. Blankenship, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us, and thank you so much for your time today and answering all of our questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it.